I had a secret crush on Howard for 7 years as an ordinary friend. But finally I decided to give up. I returned to Yuncheng and found someone who liked me to get married. But on the wedding day, Howard suddenly showed up. He brought people to smash up my wedding. He held my husband's head and threatened, "How many lives do you have to dare to marry my girl?" Just after posting on WeChat Moments, I received a call from a friend. "Tanya, I heard you're getting married. Is it true?" I was sorting out the list of wedding guests and replied when I heard the voice. "It's true." The friend laughed a few times on the phone. Besides him, there were other voices on the other end of the phone. "You're so unkind. How could you even deceive me? Didn't you post that WeChat Moments on purpose for Howard to see?" "Exactly. Tanya, Howard made you angry. But are you going to abandon us friends as well?" Hearing Howard's name again, I was stunned for a moment, but quickly came to my senses. I gently explained, "It's not for him to see. I'm really getting married." As early as when I left Yuncheng, I had already deleted all of Howard's contact information. That WeChat Moments could be seen by everyone who knew me. Except him. The friends still didn't believe it. He called Howard and said to him in a joking tone, "Howard, did you hear that? If you don't go and coax her soon, Tanya will really marry someone else." Only then did I realize that this call was made to me in front of Howard. These rich young masters had always followed Howard's lead. The reason they were willing to regard me as a friend was also because of Howard. I had always been alone in Yuncheng, with no family and no real friends. If she really wants to get married, I'll fly to Yuncheng immediately to send her a congratulatory gift. Howard's tone was nonchalant. Even through the phone, I could imagine his lazy expression at the moment. Someone beside him joked, "Isn't Tanya doing this just to force you to give her a proper status? She has liked you for so many years. It's not too much to want a proper status." Howard's voice was indifferent. "Just an ordinary friend. What kind of status does she need?" I had chased after Howard for 7 years. And up to now, in his mouth, I was still just an ordinary friend. Maybe in their upper-class circle, they were more open-minded. That's why they would kiss an ordinary friend, and do all the things that couples should do with an ordinary friend. It was he who coaxed me to cross the line in the first place. Later, it was also he who fobbed me off with the excuse of being an ordinary friend. The chair made a sharpened ear-piercing sound as it rubbed against the floor. I frowned and held the phone a little farther away. When I put it back to my ear, I just heard Howard's last words before leaving. "Tell her that if she doesn't come back tomorrow, she should never come back." I lowered my head and knitted my brows, smiling silently. His friends advised me, "Stop quarreling with Howard, and come back early." In the past, after countless quarrels with Howard, the final result was always that I couldn't bear it and took the initiative to go and coax him. I always thought that if you like someone, you shouldn't give up easily. But when disappointments accumulate too much, there will always be a moment when you suddenly feel unworthy of yourself. There was a hubbub on the other end of the phone, all about persuading me to go back and admit my mistake to Howard. "Tanya, stop making trouble." I twitched the corners of my mouth, and my tone was unusually calm. "I'm not making trouble. This time it's for real. I'm getting married. The wedding is scheduled for next Tuesday. You are welcome to attend." They still couldn't believe it. "How is it possible? You've liked Howard for 7 years. How could you be willing to marry someone else?" Yes, I had liked Howard for 7 years. How could I finally be willing to give up? My father had once saved Howard's father. So after my parents passed away, I was taken to Howard's home to be raised. When I first met Howard, Howard's father introduced me to him. "This is the daughter of my friend. She will live in our home from now on. I hope you can become friends." Later, Howard and I did become very good friends. He didn't like studying, so he always threw his homework to me, his friend, to do for him. On the eve of the exam, I still had to mark out the key knowledge points for him, predict the exam questions, and intensively review the important points. when he got into trouble outside. I, as his friend at home, would help him cover it up. Every time he asked me for a favor, Howard would put his arm around my shoulder and say, "Tanya, aren't we friends? Friends should help each other. Don't you think?" After all, it was Howard's family that had been raising me all along, and Howard was the only son of his father. I could never say no to him. Even when his puppy love at school was reported to the head teacher, Howard came to beg me, "Tanya, she's different from you. She's a good girl. The head teacher will make her cry with just a few words. You're the top student in the grade and the head teacher's favorite. Even if I say that the person I'm in love with is you, the head teacher won't have the heart to scold you." I pursed my lips and looked at him, but in my mind was what his brother had just said in the stairwell. "Howard, if you don't want your little girlfriend to be scolded, just let Tanya admit that she's the one in love with you. Anyway, she likes you. She definitely won't refuse. But then again, Tanya is so beautiful. Howard, why don't you like her?" Howard said, "Read too many novels? She's not from our circle. The story of the Prince and Cinderella only exists in fairy tales." When I heard this sentence, my first reaction was that Howard was right. But I didn't know when my liking for Howard was discovered by him and his brothers. And now, Howard put his arm around my shoulder as before and said, "Tanya, we are friends, right? You won't refuse me, will you?" Howard was right. I wouldn't refuse him. Okay. When he heard my consent, he raised his eyebrows, smiled, and pinched my face. I took a step back, evading Howard's hand, and continued, "But you must break up with her." Howard didn't hesitate. "Sure." I didn't expect him to agree so readily. The words of explanation on my lips stalled for a moment before coming out. "Howard, your father already knows about your puppy love. Breaking up now is good for both of you." Howard gave me a meaningful look. He shrugged and said nonchalantly, "You don't need to explain. Even if I break up with her, I can't be with you." The expression on my face froze instantly. But Howard smiled even more nastily. "After all, we are friends. After all, we are friends." If he could really keep a friendly distance from me, I probably wouldn't have followed him around like a fool for so many years. The qualitative change in my relationship with Howard occurred during the summer vacation after the college entrance examination. He said he had drunk too much and called me to pick him up. When I got to the place where they were having the party, his friend teased him, "Howard, Tanya is so good to you. Why don't you just be with her?" Howard gave the other person an annoyed look. "I'm friends with her. Be with my own friend? You're so disgusting." He said we were friends. But he was the one who said it was disgusting. He was also the one who kissed me in the car when I wasn't paying attention. He said, "Tanya, they're right. You are really beautiful." At that time, my mind was buzzing, and it was he who led me out of the car when we got home. Howard wasn't drunk. At least he was sober when he did these things with me. He asked me, "Which university are you going to?" I nodded. Howard was going to study abroad. This had been arranged for him by his father long ago. But to my surprise, in the end, he went to register at the same university as me. On the way, I asked him why. Howard leaned back in his seat and turned to look at me. "Tanya, you should know why I stayed, right?" I was self-righteous and thought he stayed for me. So I regarded every movie we watched together, every meal we had, and every time we were alone as a date. But when Howard talked about me to others, he still said we were just ordinary friends. Ordinary friends? Am I just an ordinary friend in your heart? I cried and questioned him. Howard said, "Isn't this good? Do you have to make the relationship public and become the talk of others to be happy?" "Tanya, I don't like that. I thought you understood me." Actually, I didn't understand. I didn't understand Howard at all. But because I liked him, I would still wrong myself and take the initiative to coax him and beg him to make up before he left. Anyway, I will always remember that when I first transferred to Yuncheng, it was he who helped me teach those classmates who laughed at my accent. Howard's words. Tell me if anyone bullies you in the future. I remembered them all my life. But later, the person who bullied me the most turned out to be him. Howard had a lot of beautiful girls around him. They were all his friends. I comforted myself anyway. All of his friends knew about my relationship with him. So it didn't matter whether it was public or not. Until the third year after graduating from college, my grandmother suddenly became seriously ill. Her only wish was to see me get married. When I rushed to find Howard, I saw him hugging Chloe. Only then did I realize how stupid and absurd it was to think that Howard had defied his father and stayed in China for me. Chloe was Howard's puppy love partner in high school, a graduate of the art department of University D. She was also the only girlfriend Howard had ever admitted. Howard stayed because of her. I stood a few steps away from them, looking at the two. I heard Chloe say, "I remember that Tanya liked you back in school. You also told me that she was like a toad lusting after a swan's flesh." She paused for a moment. "I often saw you and Tanya walking together in college. Were you two together?" "No." Howard denied it. "We are just ordinary friends." The words ordinary friends suddenly woke me up. I suddenly realized that these 7 years had been a joke. Before, I thought that one day I could win Howard's heart. Now I understand that people's hearts are originally warm. But it depends on who they are for. That night, I swallowed all the words I had originally planned to say to Howard. After deleting all of his contact information, I bought a plane ticket to leave Yuncheng. Yuncheng doesn't have the dazzling and illusory prosperity. Everything here is very real. After I came back, my grandmother's condition improved a lot. So she also had the energy to start arranging blind dates for me. I understand her thoughts. I'm just afraid that after I'm gone, you will really be alone. If those relatives were reliable, they wouldn't have sent you to your father's friend's house after your mother died. Grandma hopes that you can get married. Find a suitable person. Preferably someone who likes you and can take care of you in the future. So when she introduced Agatha's grandson to me, I didn't refuse. Agatha's grandson is named Vincent. He is very tall, nearly 1.9 meters. He has handsome eyes and eyebrows, broad shoulders and a narrow waist. He is the type who doesn't lack girlfriends. He gave me a bunch of lily of the valley on our first meeting. This was very novel. I thought I would receive roses on a blind date. You don't look like someone who needs to go on a blind date. I was very straightforward. Vincent nodded with a smile. Neither do you. He has a small mole under his eye. And he always looks affectionate when looking at people or things. After getting home, I said to my grandmother, "Vincent seems nice. But I always feel that he has had a lot of girlfriends." "Nonsense." When my grandmother laughed, her eyes disappeared. She said, "I watched Vincent grow up. There are indeed a lot of girls who like him. But he is a good boy. Besides," my grandmother hesitated to speak. "Besides what?" I asked her. But she refused to say more. The little old lady was very mischievous and was best at arousing people's curiosity. My grandmother and Agatha tried their best to matchmake us. Vincent also cooperated with them, which made me seem like an ungrateful person. "Tanya, do you want to give it a try with me?" When he said this to me, he and I were helping to break off corn cobs in the field. This was not a suitable scene for saying such things. But when I heard Vincent asking me like this, I forgot to refuse. The summer in Yuncheng wasn't that hot either. But the sun was dazzling. I froze on the spot. And after thinking for a while, I confessed to him about Howard and me. I thought he would mind and back off. But Vincent seriously told me, "The pace of life is very fast nowadays. There are very few people who will like someone so earnestly. Tanya, you are better than I thought." He was very good at complimenting people. Just like he complimented me just now. "Tanya, you are really good at breaking off corn cobs." The Yuncheng dialect combined with his unique intonation was especially pleasant to listen to. After getting along, I found that his handsome appearance was the least remarkable of Vincent's virtues. He was humorous, romantic, humble, filial, and respectful to women. There were as many shining points on him as the stars in the sky. My grandmother's illness was always on and off, sometimes getting better and sometimes getting worse. Every time she was ill, she was very obedient and actively cooperated with the doctor's treatment. Until one time I accidentally heard her secretly asking the doctor, "How long do I have to live? Doctor, please save me. I can't die yet. My Tanya hasn't got married yet. If I leave, how lonely she will be all by herself." I gently closed the door and sat down again on the bench in the corridor. When I was about to call Vincent, I looked up and saw that he had already come. "Grandma said your grandmother was ill. Is it serious?" His breath was unsteady. He should have rushed over in a hurry. "Not serious." I pulled the corners of my mouth and shook my head. Vincent was very tall. I needed to look up to see his eyes. "Vincent." "Yes? Do you want to marry me?" Before asking this question, I actually already had the answer in my heart. He wouldn't refuse me. Vincent liked me, which was obvious, but he was still taken aback. "Are you sure?" "Yes," I answered softly. "Don't you want to?" "Yes, I do." The smile in his eyes gradually spread, perhaps noticing that I had been looking up all the time. Vincent crouched down in front of me. Suddenly, the initiative changed hands. "Do you know why I gave you Lily of the Valley when we first met?" The flower language of Lily of the Valley is, "Before happiness arrives, I will wait slowly until you come back." "Tanya, I like you from the first sight." The wedding was prepared by Vincent. I thought that with such a tight schedule, the wedding would be very simple. It was not until his assistant told me about the process on the wedding day that I realized how serious Vincent was. This wedding was romantic and grand. I originally didn't plan to make it public, but suddenly I posted a WeChat Moments saying that I was getting married. It was a pity that I didn't have many friends and no one would come to my wedding. After dinner in the evening, I went to see a movie with Vincent again. I chose the movie. It was an arty film with beautiful shots but a boring plot. This kind of film was not popular in a small place like Yuncheng. There were very few people who came in to watch it at the beginning. When the movie was halfway through, there were only Vincent and me left in the theater. On the screen, the male and female protagonists were kissing passionately. I turned my head to look at Vincent. "Vincent, haven't we kissed yet?" My voice was not loud, but Vincent must have heard it. His earlobes quickly turned red. 3 months after returning to Yuncheng, I had heard many people praise Vincent for his steadiness. And now, when I kissed the steady Vincent in the theater, his eyelashes trembled slightly, and he was extremely nervous. This side of him was rare. I couldn't resist having a naughty thought and suddenly pulled away when he was thoroughly enjoying it. Vincent stood there at a loss. But he quickly realized that I had done it on purpose. "Tanya." This was the first time he had called me that. Vincent's voice was deep and hoarse, full of helpless indulgence. It felt like an electric current getting into my ears, making me tingle all over. My heart skipped a beat involuntarily. "Kiss me again." He hooked my finger and pleaded. There was an alluring charm about Vincent that made people fall for him irresistibly. When I leaned in again to press my lips against his, Vincent's hand moved to my lower back. I was about to use the same trick and pull away again, but Vincent's hand on my lower back suddenly exerted force and pulled me into his arms. "Tanya, kiss a little longer?" This time the initiative was in his hands. I could only place my hands on his chest, panting slowly, and tilt my head back to accept. "Tanya?" Vincent kissed me again and again, calling my name over and over. His voice gradually choked up. After tasting the bitterness of his tears, I opened my eyes and gently pushed him away. "Why are you crying?" Vincent hugged me and buried his head in my shoulder. "Sorry. Didn't I frighten you?" I shook my head blankly. I heard him continue. "Tanya, I really like you so much. Everything right now seems like a dream. His sudden confession made me a bit at a loss. After thinking for a while, I patted his back and comforted him. You probably have pre-wedding jitters. Relax a bit, and don't be too anxious. He said. I'm probably really a bit anxious. Tanya, will you keep me company more during this time? I nodded in agreement. After the movie, Vincent walked me to downstairs of my community. This community was an old one, and most of the residents were elderly grandparents. Seeing the red sports car by the roadside, both Vincent and I couldn't help but be curious and took a couple more glances. When it was time to leave, Vincent suddenly asked me, Tanya, will you regret it? Regret what? I asked in confusion. Vincent looked at me, his expression nervous. Regret marrying me? No. My tone was firm. Vincent, marrying you is not a decision I made on impulse. So I will never regret it. The street tilted, which had not been repaired for a long time, were on and off. Vincent stood on the lower step looking at me. His eyebrows and eyes were gentle, and his eyes were shining. Yes. If one day you regret it, it must be because I didn't do well. Tanya, I won't let you regret it. He was introverted. But at this moment he was laughing unrestrained lie. And the little mole under his eye was also shaking. After he walked away, and his figure disappeared from sight, I was about to go home. Turning around, I saw Howard standing in the shadow not far away. Seeing me standing there in a daze, Howard snorted lightly and walked towards me. I suddenly remembered that day when he said on the phone, she really wants to get married. I'll fly to Yuncheng immediately to give her a congratulatory gift. Howard really did as he said. I twitched the corner of my mouth and was about to say thank you. But Howard asked me with a sullen face, who was that man? I didn't answer but asked him instead. What are you doing in Yuncheng? Howard put his hands in his trouser pockets and looked at me with his black eyes. What do you think I'm doing? He was very good at saying such ambiguous words. This sentence pattern was exactly the same as when we went to college to register. Back then, I was self-indulgent and thought he liked me. But not anymore now. Are you here to give me a wedding gift? Thank you. Howard's face didn't look good. Today was the third day since he knew that Tanya was going to get married. On the first day, he thought that Tanya was just like before and would be okay after making a fuss for a couple of days. On the second day, he was still on Tanya's blacklist. Through a friend, he saw a photo of Tanya and that man in Tanya's WeChat Moments. Howard suddenly realized that Tanya might really be planning to get married this time. He thought, get married if you want. He didn't really have much sincerity towards her in the first place. He did those ambiguous things just because Tanya was beautiful enough and she liked him very much. So he didn't mind being ambiguous with her. But that night he had a dream. In the dream, Tanya was lying in that man's arms, doing all the things they had done before. Howard woke up suddenly. Immediately, he bought a plane ticket to Yuncheng. Who was that man just now? He repeated the question just now, stubbornly wanting to hear an answer from me. I suddenly thought of my former self. Back then, there were always a lot of beautiful girls suddenly appearing around Howard, lacking a sense of security. I would also ask him who those girls were over and over again. Howard would patiently perfunctory me at first. Just friends. Later, he gradually became impatient. He said, Tanya, who they are has nothing to do with you. You're so nosy. Now Howard's tone when asking me was exactly the same as when I asked him back then. But I won't be like him, hiding things away like a coward. He is my fiancé. We are already engaged and will have the wedding soon. Howard, if you have time, you can stay in Yuncheng to attend our wedding. Howard sneered and taunted. Are you using the marriage to threaten me? Probably because I used to love Howard without reservation in the past. Passionately and wholeheartedly. So all of them thought that I would never leave Howard. Never give him up and marry someone else. I'm really getting married. Whether you believe it or not. Fine. Howard took out his mobile phone and dialed a number right in front of me. If you're getting married, then I'll ask my friends in Cheng to come to your wedding. Tanya. Damn it. I want to see if you dare to marry someone else right in front of me. His voice was loud and his tone was fierce. Many people upstairs stuck their heads out to see what was going on. Tanya. Grandma came downstairs without my noticing. She stood in front of me and warned Howard. As long as I'm here, no one is allowed to bully my Tanya. The little old lady really regarded Howard as a bad guy. She pushed me backward. Go upstairs quickly. I'll stop him here. Tanya. Don't be afraid. Vincent will be here soon. As soon as she finished speaking, I saw Vincent coming back. Vincent is a modest and polite person. But Howard is not. Howard has been pampered since childhood. And his superior family conditions have made him develop an arrogant character. He ignored Vincent's outstretched hand, looked at me and said disdainfully, "Do you think Tanya really wants to marry you? She's just throwing a tantrum at me, forcing me to compromise with her." Even in the face of Howard's attitude, Vincent still had a gentle tone. "You don't know Tanya. She's not that kind of person." Somehow this sentence irritated Howard. He suddenly became irritable. "Do you think you know her better than I do? Do you know her past? How dare you marry her?" Vincent had a faint smile on his face and spoke in a calm tone. "If I want to know, I will ask her myself. If she's willing, she will tell me. After that." Vincent added, "I don't need to learn about Tanya from others. But Howard is a very self-centered person. She has liked me since she was a child. She has been with me for 7 years. During these 7 years, we have kissed, hugged and done everything." When he told Vincent these things, his tone was complacent, with a sense of showing off. I pursed my lips and looked at Howard, not knowing what to feel in my heart. Vincent held my hand and squeezed it gently. It was like a silent comfort. I lowered my head and heard him refute Howard. "So what? She liked you for 7 years. But I have liked her for 13 years. Mr. Howard. The fact that she liked you is not her fault. Nor can it be a stain on her. On the contrary, I admire her for being willing to like someone wholeheartedly without calculating gains and losses. Even if the person she liked was not me. Knowing that she once liked you so much, I admire her even more. She was let down by you and bullied by you. I feel sorry for her. So, in the future, I will like her twice as much. Love her. And make up for all the grievances she suffered from you. To be honest, I should thank you. If it weren't for you, my secret love might never have seen the light of day." "Mr. Howard, do you have anything else to say?" These words shocked not only me but also Howard. He stood there stunned. Grandma walked over with a broom beside the wall. "Don't think that our Tanya is easy to bully. She has someone to support her. Just try bullying her again in the future." That broom was definitely not clean. Howard stepped back in disgust. Before leaving, he still didn't forget to say harsh words. "Do you think you can really marry her?" When Vincent called me, I was still by the window enjoying the breeze. Grandma had fallen asleep. She was frightened tonight. It took her a long time to fall asleep after taking the medicine to calm down. Before going to bed, Grandma cried and said, "It's my fault. I let you suffer so much in the past. Actually, I had a good life in Howard's family these years. Howard's father was very kind to me. The food and supplies I had were almost the same as Howard's. I didn't suffer much or endure many grievances. I had always been very grateful to him. So after setting the wedding time, I sent him a separate wedding invitation immediately. Just now I received his reply. Uncle has been very busy recently and may not be able to come to the wedding. Howard's father has indeed been very busy these 2 years. It's okay. Take care of yourself and have more rest." As soon as the message was sent, I received a call from Vincent. "I'm home. Is Grandma asleep?" "Yes." Suddenly I thought of what he said downstairs. So I asked him, "Was what you said to Howard just now true?" There was silence on the other end of the phone for a few seconds. He seemed to be thinking. Tanya. Every word I said to him tonight was true. Suddenly my heart beat faster. Was the part about liking me for 13 years also true? Yes. Vincent said with a smile in his tone. All of it is true. So what you said before about liking me at first sight was not about the blind date. Right? I spoke a little fast. Vincent. Did we know each other before? I stood by the window and thought for a long time. But it seemed that there was no such person as him in my previous memories. I know you. But you may not know me. Vincent Stone couldn't hide his disappointment. It's been too long. It's normal for you to forget. Tanya. We should have the ability to turn the page. Let the past be in the past. The wind outside was getting stronger and stronger. And there were faintly a few hoarse thunderclaps. Vincent said. It's windy. It might rain. Suddenly. I thought of our wedding. If it rains, can our lawn wedding still be held as scheduled? He answered very affirmatively. Of course. After hanging up the phone. I still tossed and turned and couldn't sleep. Suddenly. Howard's threat came to my mind. After thinking for a long time, I still removed Howard from the blacklist. I sent him a text message asking to meet. The first thing Howard said when he saw me was, "Come back to Yuncheng with me." I shook my head gently. Howard. We are over. Why can you say it's over just like that? Howard was unwilling. Tanya. We haven't even broken up yet and you are going to marry someone else. What do you think I am? Indeed. I left in a hurry at that time and didn't say anything. But we haven't been together either. Howard. Didn't you say that we were just ordinary friends? You haven't confessed your love to me. Haven't asked me if we should be together. And I haven't promised to be your girlfriend either. How can this be considered as being together? Besides, haven't you always told everyone that we were just friends? Howard's lips quivered. And he hesitated to speak. I thought these things didn't need to be said out loud. It was enough for the two of us to know. In the past, I hadn't got any of these. So I comforted myself like this: it doesn't matter if I don't have them. It's okay as long as the two of us know about our relationship. But Vincent told me that the sense of ceremony is very important. So he confessed his love to me, asked me if I wanted to give it a try with him, proposed to me, and made great fanfare in preparing the engagement ceremony. When introducing me to others, he would say, "This is my fiancée." His love was never hidden, which gave me enough sense of security. Howard. In the final analysis, it's just because you don't like me. You are not like this with the person you like. When he was with Chloe, he was high profile and arrogant. And he couldn't wait for the whole school to know. After thinking for a while, I continued. Actually, on the night I left Yuncheng, I saw you with Chloe. Howard interrupted me. I have long had nothing to do with her. If you don't believe me, you can ask her. He moved so fast that I didn't even have time to stop him. And the call to Chloe was already connected. Howard had his phone on speaker. Zhao? What's the matter? Nothing. Chloe. We have long had nothing to do with each other. Right? The voice on the phone paused. Why do you suddenly ask this? Howard looked at me and said, because someone has misunderstood our relationship. And she is right beside me now. Chloe laughed twice. It's Tanya. Right? Tanya. Howard and I have long broken up. Howard's sudden move made both Chloe and me very embarrassed. I hurriedly explained. After hanging up the phone, I frowned and looked at Howard. Howard. I don't care whether you have anything to do with Chloe anymore. Can you stop being so childish? Since you don't care, then break up with Vincent and come back to Yuncheng with me. I said calmly. I won't go back. I don't like Yuncheng. The winters in Yuncheng are too cold. Actually, when I first arrived in Yuncheng, I liked it. The winters in Yuncheng were covered in white, like the world of elves. Later, I was afraid of the cold and hated the winters in Yuncheng because one year when I accompanied Howard to Shushan to see the snow, he left me on the mountain. That night, I was cold and scared, running down the mountain while crying. Fortunately, I was saved by a kind-hearted person after fainting. Since I was a child, I had never been so seriously ill. Howard's father was terrified at that time. Howard turned his head away, not daring to look into my eyes. Tanya, that was an accident. I didn't do it on purpose. I nodded with a smile. Yes. It's okay. It's all in the past. Howard, those things between us should also be in the past. Can you stop bothering me in the future? After that, I left the money for the coffee and got up to leave. Howard chased after me and grabbed me. Tanya, as long as you come back to Yuncheng with me, we will get married. Haven't you always wanted a status? Is being my wife enough? Before I could answer, Vincent opened the car door and came over. Today, he sent me to meet Howard and had been waiting for me in the car all this time. He knocked Howard's hand away. Mr. Howard, it's inappropriate for you to hold my fiance's hand like this. Seeing that Howard was about to fight, I protected Vincent and warned him. Howard, for the sake of your father, I haven't said any unkind words to you. You always said that we were friends before. I think friends shouldn't come to this point. But now, I just want you to disappear from my sight immediately. I hate you. I never want to see you again. Howard stood there in a daze. He stared at me for a long time before he said in a hoarse voice, "You have never spoken to me so loudly before." He laughed self-mockingly. Even if I did something excessive, you would only be sad by yourself. But now, you are actually scolding me for an outsider? He's not an outsider. I retorted coldly. He is my fiancé and will be my husband in the future. After that, I pulled Vincent and left. In the car, I asked Vincent, "Did you accompany me here today because you don't have confidence in me?" Vincent glanced at me and said with a wry smile, "I don't have confidence in myself. Recently, my pre-wedding anxiety has been getting more and more serious. I'm so afraid that you will suddenly change your mind and abandon me." The teasing smile on my face suddenly froze. I reached out and patted Vincent's leg, soothingly saying, "Don't worry, Vincent. I will definitely marry you." I haven't seen Howard since that day. I thought he had left Yuncheng until he suddenly showed up with a group of his buddies at my wedding. After a few days' absence, Howard seemed like a different person. I had never seen him look so haggard. He seemed to have lost a lot of weight. His eye sockets were sunken. His eyes were bloodshot. And he looked insane. He was a far cry from the man he was when he first came to Yuncheng. Howard brought his men to block us in the dressing room and threatened Vincent by pointing a gun at his head. "How many lives do you have? How dare you fucking marry my girl?" I wanted to step forward, but Vincent held me back and shielded me behind him. Until we heard Howard's father's voice outside the door. I was wondering why Howard's father would suddenly show up here when the door of the dressing room was pushed open from the outside. Seeing the situation in the room, Howard's father quickly walked over and snatched Howard's gun. Then he slapped Howard in the face with his backhand. "Are you crazy? What are you making a fuss about here?" He dragged Howard in front of Vincent. "Chief Vincent, it's all because of my poor discipline. I apologize to you on behalf of my son." Then he let the bodyguards come in and tie up Howard. "I'll take him away right away and ensure that it won't affect the wedding." But Howard didn't want to leave. He kept struggling and making a fuss. He even grabbed a pair of scissors and held them against his own neck to threaten his father. "If you dare to let them tie me up, I'll kill myself right in front of you." Howard's father had only one son, so of course he didn't dare to make another move. I looked at the chaotic dressing room and pursed my lips. Calmly, I walked up to Howard and slapped him in the face without warning. Everyone fell silent. Howard's face was full of disbelief. He was stunned for a long time before he reacted. "Have you made enough of a fuss? Howard, if you have, can you get out?" I looked into his eyes and said word by word, "Howard, What on earth did I do wrong? Why are you treating me like this? Are you trying to ruin my wedding? Howard was stunned and the scissors in his hand dropped to the floor. The bodyguards took the opportunity to come over and tie him up. Tanya. I interrupted him. Get out. Leave Yuncheng and never show up in front of me again. Vincent walked up to me, glanced at Howard with a smile, and put his arm around my shoulders. Let's go. The wedding is about to start. At the wedding, the MC asked me if I was willing to marry Vincent. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Howard guarded by bodyguards, standing in the corner watching the ceremony. When I said I do, Howard suddenly burst into tears, worried about affecting the other guests. The bodyguards directly stuffed a towel into his mouth and took him away from the wedding scene. Grandma didn't know about Howard's scene making at the wedding. Seeing me getting married, the old lady was crying and laughing at the same time. I'm just so happy. It's so good. My Tanya will never be alone again. She was in poor health and wanted to go home to rest after the ceremony. On my way back after seeing off Grandma, I accidentally heard Howard's voice. Dad. Let me go and say one more word to Tanya. Okay? After that, I'll go back to Yuncheng with you. Howard's father was exasperated. What are you going to say? She's already married. Whatever you say is useless now. Howard. I told you before to be with Tanya. It was you who looked down on her and didn't want her at that time. I was wrong. Dad. Howard said while crying. I thought she would always like me. I thought that when I had enough fun, I would give her a name and marry her. I just didn't expect that one day she would leave and marry someone else. Enough. Howard's father patted Howard. She is very happy now. Don't bother her anymore. Besides, you have offended Vincent. I'm afraid he won't let you off easily in the future. Howard. It's time for you to grow up. I lowered my head and smiled, pretending not to have heard. I lifted my foot and continued walking. Tanya. Vincent came out to look for me because he saw that I hadn't come back for a long time. He glanced in Howard's direction, and then came over to hold my hand. I asked him, was it you who called Howard's father over? Yes. Vincent replied softly. Howard is quite crazy. But he is afraid of his father. So I sent an invitation to Howard. He was quite surprised to know that I was marrying you. Oh. So that's how it was. I nodded my head. Seeing that I didn't say anything more, Vincent asked again. Are you tired? No. The weather today is very good. The sky is clear and blue, and a gentle breeze is blowing. I looked up at Vincent and told him in a low voice, Vincent. I seem to remember the first time we met. So, you already liked me back then. Vincent stopped walking. He smiled and kissed my forehead and then my eyes. Yes. I like Tanya. I have liked Tanya since a very long time ago. The end.